Okay, so get this right. Today, we're diving into the world of blacksmithing.
Blacksmithing.
Yeah, blacksmithing. That
Mm.
craft, making things out of metal, it's been around forever. And the thing is, it's not all like horseshoes and old-timey stuff.
It really isn't like that. It's actually pretty surprising how relevant blacksmithing still is.
Right. I have to admit, when you guys requested this deep dive, I was picturing, I don't know, something out of a history book. But what we found is way more interesting. We're going to be looking at how this, old craft is not just, surviving, but actually thriving, even now.
Absolutely.
And we're basing all this on RoleCatcher's career guide for blacksmiths. They have some super cool insights into what it takes to be a blacksmith these days. Everything from the skills to the job market.
Yeah.
Wild, right? So first things first, what exactly are we talking about when we say modern blacksmith? Like, what do they actually do?
You know what's funny? Most people, when they think blacksmith, they think horseshoes.
Totally.
And while that's still a thing, believe it or not, it's not all of it.
Really? I would have thought horseshoe making would be, done in a factory by now. Why hasn't it gone that way?
You'd think, right. But the thing is, horseshoes, they're not one size fits all. You need to custom fit them to each horse.
Oh, that makes sense.
It takes a real expert eye. You can't get that from a factory.
Right. Some things are
Yes.
just better left to the experts. Okay, so if it's not all horseshoes, then what else are these modern blacksmiths making?
It's cool. Think more like really intricate custom gates or hand-forged railings, even furniture. They're
Right.
taking metal and turning it into like these amazing pieces of art.
I'm picturing those stunning one-of-a-kind things you see in those fancy design magazines. So cool. But okay, be honest. When you picture a blacksmith, do you still think of someone in a dark, smoky forge, just muscles bulging, hammering away at this red-hot metal?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that image, right? And honestly, it is really physical work. You're not just like typing on a computer. You're shaping metal with your hands. And yeah, it gets crazy hot, especially when you're working with a forge.
So probably not the best job for someone who overheats easily.
Probably not. But here's the thing. A modern blacksmith, they don't always work in that kind of old school dark forge you're imagining.
Really? What's it like then?
A lot of blacksmiths now, they work in these really cool studios or workshops, kind of like you'd picture for an artist, like a sculptor. Sometimes it's their own space. Sometimes they share with other artisans.
A blacksmith studio.
What?
So much cooler than a cubicle. I bet those shared spaces are interesting.
Oh, for sure. Lots of collaboration, learning from each other. It's a cool community.
I love that. So you mentioned technology earlier. I'm curious, how is tech playing a role in blacksmithing these days?
Right. You wouldn't think they go together, high tech and blacksmithing.
Not really. Are we talking robots doing the blacksmithing now?
Not quite robots, but they do use things like CAD software, that's computer-aided design, to design the pieces before they actually make them.
Huh. So it's like they're using tech to make their work even better.
Exactly.
Love that. Okay, so for someone listening who's like, this is so cool, but how do you actually have a career doing this? Let's break it down.
Yeah, it's not like you just suddenly become a blacksmith overnight. It's a process.
So what's that journey look like? Where do you even begin if you want to be a blacksmith?
Well, you usually start as an apprentice, which means learning from a more experienced blacksmith.
Except.
You're really getting that hands-on experience, learning how to use the tools and everything, and you're developing your eye for detail. That's super important in blacksmithing.
Yeah, I bet. So what's after the apprentice stage? Do you become a master blacksmith or something?
Well, not quite master level yet, but you move up to journeyman blacksmith, and that's when you start taking on more responsibility, maybe leading some projects.
Cool. So you get to be more creative.
Exactly. You're developing your own style, putting your own spin on things, and eventually, with enough experience, that's how you become a master blacksmith.
Okay, now that sounds impressive. Master blacksmith. What does a master blacksmith actually do?
At that level, you're not just skilled at the craft, but you're also mentoring others, kind of shaping the future of blacksmithing. It's pretty cool. And this actually ties back to RoleCatcher. Remember, they have those skills analysis and skills gap features we talked about?
Oh, yeah, almost forgot about those. So how would those be useful for aspiring blacksmiths?
Well, the skills analysis can help you see what skills you already have that might be useful for blacksmithing.
Okay, so if you're good with your hands, that could be a good sign.
Exactly. Like, say you love woodworking or you're always fixing things around the house, those skills translate.
That's awesome. And what about that other one, the skills gap?
So that one helps you figure out what skills you might need to work on. Like maybe you're great at design, but you've never worked with metal. RoleCatcher will point that out and even help you find resources to learn.
Wow, that is useful. Okay, but let's be real for a sec. Blacksmithing sounds amazing and all, but can you actually make a living doing it these days? Like,
Yeah.
is it a real career path?
It's a good question. And honestly, with all the technology in factories, it's fair to wonder.
Right, so what's the deal?
Well, it's interesting because even though industrialization changed things, blacksmithing didn't die out. In fact, there's actually a growing demand for handcrafted things.
You mean like unique stuff you can't just get from a factory?
Exactly. People want things with like a personal touch, something with a story behind it.
So the human element is back in style.
Totally. And it's not just a trend. RoleCatcher actually says the field is supposed to grow by 3% over the next 10 years.
Wow, 3%. That's pretty good.
It is. It shows how much people value these handcrafted items. And it's not just about the finished product, it's about the skill that goes into it. Like we were talking about before, metallurgy, understanding the metal is so important.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. But how does that actually work in practice?
So think about it like this, right? Imagine you're trying to make like a rose out of metal.
Okay.
You need to know how that metal like heats up and cools down, how much it changes shape. If you don't, your rose could just like melt into a blob.
Yeah, that would be a disaster. So knowing your metals is key. But for someone listening who's thinking, okay, this is awesome, I'm in, but how do I even get started? How do you become a blacksmith these days?
You know, it's funny you ask that because apprenticeships are still a thing.
Really?
Yeah, it's one of those fields where you really do need that hands-on learning. But you can find workshops and classes too, even online stuff to get you started.
So it's really about just going for it, trying it out, seeing if you like it. You never know, you might discover a hidden talent for, like, metalwork.
Exactly. And honestly, in a world that's so focused on tech and being online all the time, there's something so cool about making something with your own two hands, you know?
It's true. It's like in a world of, like, instant downloads and stuff, there's something really special about a craft that's been around for hundreds of years. And I bet owning something like a piece of furniture or something that you made yourself, that's got to feel amazing.
Totally. It's about connecting with like this long line of craftspeople, you know, and bringing something new to this old tradition. Maybe someday you'll be the master blacksmith teaching someone else.
That's awesome. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this deep dive, it's don't underestimate the power of like art and fire and skill all mixed together. Who knows what you could create?
I love that. Blacksmithing really is more than just a job. It's, like you said, art and skill, and it shows how creative people can be.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the world of blacksmithing. Until next time, keep those creative sparks flying.